Hey everybody, it's Haley here. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is actually a pre-recorded live video from our Instagram page, and we're just gonna give everybody a couple minutes to join. So hang tight, and then we will get started with our one bowl brownie recipe. So in the meantime, what you can do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And then after you do that, you're gonna line a 9 by 13 inch baking pan. So this is a 9-inch by 13-inch baking pan, and I have lined it with parchment paper, and then I have sprayed it with non-stick spray. And I'm just gonna put that aside. So go ahead and preheat your oven and spray your baking pan with cooking spray and parchment paper. And the reason we do this with parchment paper is because it's much easier to lift the brownies up out of the pan once they're fully cooked. Okay. So that is step one. This is another really simple recipe here that only requires the use of one bowl, which is what I really like about this recipe. And on my other live story when we did baking, we did a one bowl banana bread. So today we're doing a one bowl brownie recipe. So let's go ahead and get started. Wash your hands if you haven't done so already. Okay. So in a large bowl, we're gonna stir together our butter, sugar, brown sugar, eggs, vanilla, and we're gonna do that all together until they're smooth. So let's go through this one at a time. And I just have my recipe here with my pencil to mark off what we've done. It's a super good thing to do in case so you don't get lost in your recipe. Okay, so first things first. Our melted butter. This recipe calls for a lot of butter. So we are gonna use 1 cup of butter melted. So ahead of time, I melted 1 cup of butter, and that is equivalent to 2 sticks of butter. I'm just gonna show you here what that looks like. So if you've been following along with some of the other videos, these are the butter sticks that I get, and each stick is equivalent to 1/2 cup. So I used 2 of these to get 1 cup of butter. So we're just gonna put that in our bowl here. Okay, and I'm just gonna set that aside. Okay, so there's our melted butter. Now we're gonna stir in our sugar. So our regular white sugar, we're gonna use 1 cup of white sugar. So I'm gonna grab my cup here. And unlike the flour, I can just stick my cup in here like that and then level off the top with my knife. So there's 1 cup of sugar. We're gonna put that aside. And then we need to add in 1 cup of brown sugar. So I've got brown sugar here. Okay, so I'm actually gonna use a spoon here, and I'm gonna spoon the brown sugar into my cup. So again, 1 cup of brown sugar. So far we've used 1 cup of butter, 1 cup of regular sugar, and then now 1 cup of brown sugar. And we're actually just gonna pack it down as we go. That's really important to do that. I'm gonna fill it right up to the top here. If you're watching this on YouTube, I know having the camera facing kind of up and down isn't ideal. Normally I would film this in a landscape way, but because this is taken off of our live video, it is this way. So hopefully you can still see what I'm doing. nice and easily here. Okay, so 1 cup of brown sugar is going into my bowl, and I've packed that down. Okay, so now we're gonna add our eggs. So this recipe calls for a lot of eggs. I would say if you try this recipe and you find that the brownies are too wet or too moist, you can actually take 1 egg out the next time you make it, because this recipe calls for 4 eggs. We're gonna do all 4 eggs for this recipe because that's what it calls for. But just kind of use your discretion. So if you do this recipe and you find that the 4 eggs was too much, you can go ahead and reduce it next time you make it. So I'm gonna grab a spare bowl here and just crack my eggs to make sure I don't get any shells in. If I get a shell in this bowl, it's way easier to pick it out from this bowl compared to that bowl. So there's 1 egg. There's my 2nd egg. Here's my 3rd egg. Let's see if I can get 4 for 4 eggs without shells. And yes, I can. So 4 eggs in my bowl. I'm just gonna throw my eggshells in the green bin. Okay, so there's my 4 eggs here. That uses up the rest of my carton. Okay, so 4 eggs going into my bowl here. And I'm just gonna put that aside. Okay, the last thing going in here for now is gonna be our vanilla. And for vanilla, we need 1 tablespoon of vanilla. So you heard that correctly, that's 1 tablespoon. So that's a whole tablespoon here. So there's 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Okay, so now we are going to mix these together until it's smooth. So I'm gonna start by using a fork, and then I'm gonna switch to probably a whisk if I need to. So you wanna mix these all together until they're nice and smooth. And believe it or not, we're almost done this recipe. Okay, now I'm gonna switch over to my whisk. That's what's so nice about these 1 bowl recipes, is that they're super fast to make and they're super easy. Okay. All right, so just about there. It's pretty smooth, but just to make sure. And hopefully if you're watching this on YouTube right now, hopefully you're following along with me. That's the easiest I find, to just follow along with what I'm doing. Okay, so that actually looks really good. Just make sure that you're mixing everything in until it's nice and smooth. And I think it is. All right, so I'm just gonna let this strip off my whisk here. Okay. Okay, so next we are going to sift in our flour and our cocoa. And then we're gonna add in our salt, espresso powder if you're using it, and then we're gonna mix in our chocolate chips. So yeah, we're almost done. We're on to our last few ingredients. So I'm gonna use a sifter for this, and I'll show you in a second what I'm gonna do here. So we're gonna need 1 cup of flour. So I'm just gonna grab my flour here. I'm gonna put my whisk just down here. So using a spoon and a knife, I'm just gonna grab a new spoon. We're gonna spoon our flour into our measuring cup here. We only need 1 cup of flour. So just 1 cup of flour here. And I did use a spoon to scoop it into my measuring cup here. All right, I just leveled that off with my knife. Okay. So I'm gonna actually just set my sifter right here on top of my bowl here. So there's my flour that I've just dumped in. And then I'm just gonna put this aside so you can see what I'm doing here. So I just put my flour into my sifter that's over my bowl here, as you can see. So now we're gonna take 1 cup of cocoa powder. So I'm just gonna grab my 1 cup measuring cup here and my cocoa powder. Spoon it into my measuring cup here. Okay. I'm just gonna take my knife and level it off. I'm gonna try not to get cocoa powder all over the counter. Okay, so there's 1 cup of cocoa powder. And we're just gonna put that aside. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm just gonna dump my cocoa powder in the sifter here. Now the reason your recipe is calling for you to sift in the cocoa powder and the flour is because cocoa powder has the tendency to make clumps. So see how I'm tapping the sifter against my hand to just get everything out of the sifter, the flour and the cocoa. If you don't have a sifter, you don't have to use it. It's not necessary. It's just kind of prevents any clumps in your cocoa powder. Okay, so another optional ingredient here is if you want to use espresso powder, you can go ahead and add that in now. And what it does is it just basically enhances the chocolate flavor of your brownies. I have chosen to not use it, but if you are using it, you would add 1 teaspoon of espresso powder. So if you're using it, go ahead and add that into this bowl right now. But again, I'm choosing to not use it. Okay, so now I'm gonna add in my salt. So we need 1 teaspoon of salt. So again, 1 teaspoon of salt. So I'm just going to dip my 1 teaspoon in here. And we're gonna go ahead and put that in our bowl as well. 1 teaspoon of salt that was. Okay, so now we are just going to stir this until it's combined. So it's really important that we don't overmix it. If you overmix it, brownies, they'll just become kind of tough. You just don't wanna stand here and mix it for longer than you need to. So just mix it until all of the flour and the cocoa powder is fully incorporated here. And then we're gonna add our last ingredient. So there's a lot of liquid ingredients in here, but I actually find that it's not that liquidy of a batter. So I think using the 4 eggs was a good call, because there's actually, the dry ingredients really kind of evens it out. Wow, this is looking really rich and chocolatey. Okay, so it's all mixed in. So I'm gonna stop mixing, and now it's time to add our chocolate chips. So we are gonna add in 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips into our bowl here, and then we're gonna sprinkle some on top as well. So a little kind of tip for you, I'm using semi-sweet chocolate chips. I think these ones are technically chocolate chunks. You can use chocolate chunks, chocolate chips, kind of whatever you'd like. If you don't have semi-sweet chocolate chips, but if you have, say, sweet chocolate chips or regular milk chocolate chips, that's fine. You can go ahead and use those as well. I'm just using semi-sweet to cut down the sweetness. So I'm just going to measure out 1 cup of chocolate into my cup here. So 1 cup of chocolate. Okay, so there is 1 cup. So I'm gonna actually just put that right in my bowl. And we're gonna fold in the chocolate chips. So we've done this in some other videos, but basically when you fold, I'm gonna get closer here, you're gonna take your wooden spoon and just kind of lift and go over. So you're not stirring, you're basically lifting. Hopefully in the camera you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of lifting. And you're just gonna stir this until you feel like the chocolate chips are fully combined. So probably 1 more stir here. Okay, that's pretty much it. We're almost done. So now I recommend that you go ahead and grab a spatula, because we're gonna need that in order to put the brownie mixture into our pan here. So I just went ahead and grabbed a spatula. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my pan here, and very carefully, this is gonna be pretty heavy, I'm going to just pour my batter into my pan. This is a really rich, chocolatey looking batter. It looks really good. Awesome. So there we go. And that spatula is gonna be really good to use even just to get everything off your wooden spoon and the sides of your bowl. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use it now. Okay. I'm actually gonna try and get some of this batter off my bowl here. Yeah, I had a lot of batter still left in my bowl, so definitely use a spatula to get all of that batter out. Okay, so I'm gonna set this aside. Now, we are going to spread this batter into our pan. So you just wanna spread it nice and evenly, or as evenly as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, just try and spread it as even as you can. So don't worry too much if you don't have a 9 by 13 inch pan. You can actually use a bigger pan if you want, because this made quite a lot of batter. You can use a larger pan and then just have thinner brownies, and then you would just bake them for less time. Okay, so that's pretty much all the way to the edge there. So we're on to the very last step here. So I'm gonna take my chocolate chips from before and I'm gonna measure a 1/4 cup, so 1/4. I'm gonna pour a 1/4 cup in here. So that's not very much, just that much. It's not a lot. So we're actually just going to, I'm gonna just put these in my hand and we're just gonna sprinkle these on top of our brownies. So go ahead and sprinkle your chocolate chips or chocolate chunks on top here. Again, that was a 1/4 cup that we're just gonna sprinkle on top. And those are gonna be really nice. They're gonna melt into our brownies. These are going to be extra, extra chocolatey. Okay, and there we are. So we have some double chocolate 1 bowl brownies ready to go in the oven. So what you need to do is put your brownies in the oven for 25 to 30 minutes. Use your judgment. You want to make sure that a toothpick comes out clean, but still moist. So if you stick a toothpick in the middle and batter, there's very clear chocolate batter on it, it needs longer. So just kind of use your judgment while it's in the oven and test it often. So at the 25 to 30 minute mark, stick a toothpick in the middle and see if it's done. If you think it is, pull it out. If not, you can keep it in for a bit. But it's important to not over bake brownies because they will set as they're cooling. So as brownies are cooling, they do set and kind of, they just set up really nicely as they're cooling. So if they're a tiny bit underbaked, don't worry about it, but try not to overbake them. So I know that sounds like a lot, but 25 to 30 minutes in the oven, use your judgment, and then I will post the results in a picture at the end of this video. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was easy for you to follow along with, and I will see you next time.